So stop 5 is interactive language arts notebooks. So Kim has created a fun way to go through all of the theory that goes along with grade 6 ELA. Again, because of the provincial achievement test, there are so many things that the kids have to not only learn, but then also be able to study. Kim is utilizing interactive LA notebooks. Each chapter in this book includes a divider for the objective that's covered in the chapter, a hands-on activity for the students to put in their writing and language notebooks, so the interactive notebook, and a page that you can use as an assessment or as a worksheet for additional practice. In addition, each chapter has a page of graphics that students can color, cut out, and paste into their notebooks. Students can then use this as a study tool and as an aid in their everyday writing. For example, I taught a lesson in which we learned about internal and external conflict. For the page in their notebook that went with this lesson, we created a lift the flap that said internal, one that said internal and one that said external, and it says it on the outside. When you lifted the flap on the inside, there's examples of the different types of conflict, as well as a definition of each type of conflict. The students had to think of the examples to put under the flap themselves, and we came up with a class working definition of the types of conflict. So it wasn't from a dictionary, but it was something that we created and thought of ourselves, so that way it was more meaningful for the kids. The students are able to relate the information back to their life with the examples they came up with, and are able to then use this later for studying. So basically every page has something that the kids can sort of interact with. They also have it in math, but there's like a lift the flap or a pull down, or there's a graphic that they've put on there, and the examples they come up with, right, so that it's more meaningful for them. So then the objectives from curriculum for this one are 1.2, clarify and extend. So use talk notes, personal writing and representing, together with texts and ideas of others to clarify and shape understanding. Then we've got 2.1, use strategies and cues. So combine personal experiences and the knowledge and skills gained through previous experiences with oral, print, and other media text to understand new ideas and information. So that's just coming up with those examples. And then again in 2.1, use definitions provided in context to identify the meanings of unfamiliar words. Then we've got 2.3, understand forms, elements, and techniques. These ones go a little bit long just because it's the very specific theory stuff. So we're talking about discuss the connections among plot, setting, and characters in oral, print, and other media texts. Identify first and third person narration and discuss preferences with reference to familiar texts. Explore techniques such as visual imagery, sound, flashback, and voice inflection in oral, print, and other media texts. Identify strategies that presenters use in media text to influence audience. So that's talking about the individual pages that are in the book. So there's a page for, actually I think there's more than one page, for the first and third person narration. And then there's a page for plot setting and characters. And there's a page for the different techniques. So those objectives are covered within the framework of this book. Because each page is going over the different objectives. So it's a good way to cover a lot of the theory that's, she always uses it as an intro to a lesson. So for example, we did the internal and external conflict, and then we talked about, we made our own storyboard comics, where they had to do an example of that. And so the intro was completing that page, and then the lesson was talking about actually figuring out the conflict. And using that conflict and understanding it. So it's usually the intro that leads into what we're going to be doing. So then they have that page to refer back to when they're studying for their PAT. So then we have 2.4, use literary, or create original text. So use literary devices such as imagery and figurative language to create particular effects. And then enhance and improve, edit for appropriate verb tense and for correct pronoun references. So that's another page that'll be in the book. Attend to conventions, identify the use of coordinate and subordinate conjunctions to express ideas. Use complex sentence structures in a variety of sentence types in own writing. Identify comparative and superlative forms of adjectives and use in own writing. And identify past, present, and future verb tenses and use throughout a piece of writing. So again, these are just things that would be their own page, right? So you could talk about future tense and past tense and make that a page with a graphic and then lead into a lesson about it. So you open with the interactive LA book, but it's always there for them to go back to. If they have a question, you open up the book and you say, okay, let's look over this. Let's check out these examples. Can you think of a new example? So it's a good study tool, and it's a good bridge into a lesson, right? And sometimes it's a good pretext because the kids are able to provide their own examples and you can kind of see what they know. So